The cargo ship Morning Star drifted through the black void of space, its hull scarred from years of travel between distant worlds. Inside the cockpit, Taiyang sat with his feet up on the control panel, watching the stars pass by. His co-pilot Minho was in the back, fixing something that had broken for the third time that week. Taiyang. "The cooling system is acting up again," Minho called out from the engine room. "Just hit it with a wrench," Taiyang replied, not taking his eyes off the window. "I already did." "That hit it harder." This was normal life for human cargo. Haulers in the year 2847, humanity, had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago, and most humans worked simple jobs like shipping goods between planets. The galaxy was huge, filled with hundreds of alien species. Most of them had been traveling through space for thousands of years. Humans were the new kids, and everyone knew it. Taiyang didn't mind. He had spent 10 years in Earth Special Forces before becoming a cargo pilot. Compared to military life, flying a broken-down ship through peaceful space was easy. Boring, but easy. "We're about 2 hours from Calvara 9, Taiyang said into the ship's intercom. "Heyoon, you awake back there?" In the passenger section, Heyoon opened her eyes. She had been trying to sleep for the past hour, but the ship's rattling made it impossible. She was a diplomat, on her way to the trade station at Calvara 9 for another boring meeting about shipping regulations. "I'm awake," she said. "Hard to sleep when the ship sounds like it's falling apart." "She's not falling apart," Taiyang said defensively. "She's just old." "There's a difference." Heyoon smiled and went back to reading reports on her tablet. The galaxy was mostly peaceful these days thanks to the Galactic Council. They made sure everyone followed the rules. Trade was good. Wars were rare, but there were exceptions. The Varkesh Dominion was one of those exceptions. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Varkesh. They were a species of reptilian warriors who had been conquering other worlds for 300 years. They didn't join the Galactic Council. They didn't follow any rules. They just took what they wanted. The Varkesh were 7 feet tall with scales like armor and claws that could cut through metal. But their real weapon wasn't their strength. It was fear. When the Varkesh decided to conquer a planet, they would first capture some people from that world. They would torture them slowly, recording every scream, every plea for mercy. Then they would broadcast those recordings to the entire planet Dot. By the time the Varkesh ships arrived, most civilizations would surrender without a fight. Those who didn't would be crushed in days. The Varkesh had conquered 42 different species this way. They had never lost a war. Taiyang knew all this, but he wasn't worried. The Varkesh operated far from human space. The chance of running into them was almost zero. That's what he thought, anyway. The alarm started screaming. "What the hell?" Minho ran back to the cockpit. Taiyang was already in his seat, hands flying across the controls. 3 ships had just appeared on their scanners, moving fast. Very fast. "Pirates?" Minho asked. Taiyang zoomed in on the ships. His face went pale. Worse, Varkesh raiders. Heyoon rushed into the cockpit. "Varkesh? Out here?" "That's impossible. This is Council space." Tell them that," Taiyang said, watching the 3 warships close in on their position. The Varkesh ships were brutal-looking things, all sharp angles and dark metal. They looked like they were designed to cause fear just by being seen. Weapons ports opened along their hulls. "They're hailing us," Minho said quietly. Taiyang hit the come button. A face appeared on the screen. It was a Varkesh warrior with cold yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and harsh. "Human vessel. You will shut down your engines. You will prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in pain." The cum went dead. Minho looked at Taiyang. "What do we do?" Taiyang stared at the screen for a moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face. "What are you smiling about?" Heyoon asked, confused and scared. "I'm thinking," Taiyang said. His smile grew wider. "This is not the time to be happy," Minho said, but Taiyang was already working. His hands moved across the controls, bringing up system after system. Minho, go to the cargo bay. We're carrying mining explosives, right? Yeah, but start moving them toward the airlocks. Hey Yoon, can you fly this ship? What? No. I'm a diplomat. You're about to become a pilot. Sit here. Keep us steady. Taeyang stood up and ran toward the back of the ship. Minho followed him, scared but trusting his Captain Dot in the cargo bay. Taeyang started ripping open crates. Inside were small explosive charges used for mining asteroids. Not very powerful, but they didn't need to be powerful. They just needed to be unexpected. What's the plan? Minho asked. The Varkesh have been conquering species for 300 years, Taeyang said, his smile never fading. Every single one of those species did the same thing. They either ran away or surrendered. So what are we going to do? Something stupid. The Varkesh ships were right next to them now. Tiang could see them through the cargo bay windows. He watched as one of the ships extended a docking tube toward the Morning Star. Now! Tiang yelled. "MINHO" hit the cargo door release. The entire bay opened to space. All the mining explosives, all the cargo, everything that wasn't bolted down flew out into the void, right into the path of the Varkesh ships. The explosives detonated on impact. They weren't strong enough to destroy the Varkesh ships, but they didn't need to be. The ship's sensors were blinded. Their shields flickered. For just a moment, they were confused. That moment was all Taeyang needed. Hey Yoon! Full power to the engines. Ram the middle ship. Are you insane? Hayoon screamed, but her hands were already moving. She had been scared a moment ago. Now she was just angry. These aliens had threatened them. They had tried to make them feel helpless. She didn't feel helpless anymore. The Morning Star lurched forward. It wasn't a warship. It was an old cargo hauler with weak shields and barely working engines. But it was moving fast, and the Varkesh weren't expecting it. The Morning Star slammed into the side of the Varkesh raider. Metal screamed. Shields sparked. The impact threw everyone to the floor, but the human ship's angle was perfect. The collision sent the Varkesh ship spinning into one of its companions. Go, go, go! Taeyang yelled, pulling himself up. Hayoon pushed the engines past their safety limits. The Morning Star pulled away from the chaos, its hull groaning but holding together. Behind them, the Varkesh ships were trying to recover. They were damaged but not destroyed. They would be coming after the humans soon, but Taeyang was still smiling. That, he said, breathing hard, is how humans say hello. On the lead Varkesh ship, the commander stared at his screens in confusion. In 300 years of conquest, no prey species had ever fought back like this. No one had ever smiled when cornered. The commander sent a message back to Varkesh High Command. We have encountered something new. These humans are different. They do not fear. Recommend further investigation. The Varkesh Dominion had just learned that humanity existed. And they had made a terrible mistake. They had made it personal. The Morning Star jumped to faster-than-light speed, escaping into the darkness. Inside the ship, Taeyang, Minho, and Hayoon sat in silence, their hearts pounding. Then Minho started laughing. We just rammed a Varkesh warship with a cargo hauler. Hayoon started laughing too, the fear draining away into relief. Taeyang's smile never faded. Wait until we tell people about this. None of them knew it yet, but their story would spread across human space in days. And the Varkesh, for the first time in 3 centuries, had found prey that bit back. The war was coming. The news traveled fast. Within 3 days, every human colony knew about Taeyang's encounter with the Varkesh raiders. Some people called him crazy. Others called him a hero. But everyone agreed on one thing: the Varkesh would come back on the colony world of New Jeju. Guru sat in her office and watched the news reports for the 100th time. She was the colonial defense coordinator, which was usually a boring job. New Jeju was a farming world. The biggest threat they normally faced was bad weather during harvest season. Not anymore. Juwo's desk was covered with reports from the Galactic Council. Every single one said the same thing: surrender immediately. The council had sent representatives from a dozen different alien species, all of them begging humanity to give up without a fight. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said. Dongwu entered the office. He was a Marine Corps sergeant, one of only 50 trained soldiers on New Jeju. The colony had 50,000 people total. Most of them were farmers, teachers, engineers, and families. Normal people living normal lives. "The council representatives want to meet with you again," Dongwu said. Jiwoo rubbed her tired eyes. "What do they want now?" "Same thing as before. They want us to evacuate." Jiwoo stood up and looked out her window. She could see the colony's main town below. Children were playing in the streets. People were going about their daily lives. This was home for all of them. "Tell them no," she said. Dongwu nodded. He had expected that answer. "The other species don't understand us. They keep saying we're going to die if we fight." "Maybe we will," Jiwoo said quietly. "But we'll die on our feet, not on our knees." Down in the colony's research center, Sunhee was studying everything she could find about the Varkesh. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien species. Right now, she was trying to understand how the Varkesh thought. What she found was disturbing. The Varkesh had conquered 42 different civilizations over 300 years. Every single conquest followed the same pattern. First, they would capture some victims and torture them. Then they would broadcast the torture to the entire planet. Then they would invade. The broadcasts always worked. The defenders would see what was waiting for them, and their will to fight would crumble. Some planets surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight but gave up after the first battle. Sunhee found recordings of these broadcasts. She forced herself to watch them, even though it made her sick. She needed to understand the enemy's tactics, but something didn't make sense. The Varkesh tactics only worked because every species they fought had the same reaction to fear. They froze. They panicked. They broke. Humans were different. Sunhee had studied human history. She knew that when humans got scared, they didn't freeze. They got creative. They got angry. Sometimes they did incredibly stupid and brave things, like ramming a cargo ship into a warship. She wrote up her findings and sent them to Jiwoo's office. Then she sent a copy to Dongwu. If they were going to fight the Varkesh, they needed to understand what made humans different. Meanwhile, in the capital city, Kinmin sat in the intelligence office reading classified reports. He was an intelligence officer, and his job was to know things that other people didn't. Right now, he knew something terrible. The Varkesh were sending 12 warships to New Jeju. They would arrive in 5 days. 12 ships carrying over 5,000 warriors. Against 50 soldiers and 50,000 civilians, Kyungmin should have been terrified. Instead, he felt angry. He sent a message to Jiwoo. "They think we're easy prey. Let's prove them wrong." Over the next 4 days, New Jeju transformed. Dongwu's Marines started training anyone who would volunteer. Farmers learned how to use weapons. Teachers learned tactics. Engineers studied the planet's infrastructure. Looking for anything that could be used as a weapon, Jiwoo gave a speech to the whole colony. She didn't lie to them. She told them exactly what was coming. She told them they could leave if they wanted. Ships were available for evacuation. Nobody left. "This is our home," one farmer said. "If they want it, they'll have to take it from us." The Galactic Council sent another representative, an alien named Kelver from a species called the Thelani. The Thelani had been conquered by the Varkesh 200 years ago. Kelver was old, and his people had lived under Varkesh rule for generations. He met with Jiwoo privately. "Please," he begged. "You don't understand what they'll do to you. I've seen it. Everyone I knew, everyone. They made us watch as they. He couldn't finish. The memories were too painful. Jiwoo put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry for what happened to your people. But we're not like your people. No offense." "None taken," Kelver said sadly. "But you're making a mistake. The Varkesh cannot be beaten. Every species that has tried to fight them has been destroyed. Why do you think you'll be different?" Jiwoo looked him in the eyes. Because we've spent our entire history fighting each other. We've had thousands of wars on our own planet. We know what real terror looks like because we invented it. The Varkesh think they can scare us? They have no idea what humans are capable of when we're actually trying to hurt someone. Kelver left, shaking his head. He had tried to help, but these humans were too stubborn to listen. On the 5th day, the Varkesh fleet arrived. 12 massive warships appeared in orbit around New Jeju. They were beautiful in a terrible way, all sharp edges and dark metal. Their weapons could glass the entire planet from orbit, but they didn't fire. The Varkesh always followed the same pattern. First came the broadcast. Every screen on New Jeju suddenly turned on. Every communication device, every computer, everything with a display showed the same image. It was Minho from Taeyang's crew. The Varkesh had captured him during the raid. What followed was horrible. The Varkesh tortured him slowly, methodically. They wanted the people of New Jeju to see what would happen to them. They wanted to break the colonists' will before the invasion even started. In her office, Keiwoo watched with tears streaming down her face. Around the colony, people watched in horror, but something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking, the colonists got angry. Very angry. A farmer named Daeyeon watched the broadcast with his family. When it ended, he didn't cry. He didn't panic. He picked up the rifle Dongwoo had given him and said, "They just made a big mistake." All across the colony, the same thing was happening. The broadcast that was supposed to break them had done the opposite. Now they knew exactly what they were fighting for. Now they knew exactly what would happen if they lost. Jiwoo wiped her tears and opened a communication channel to the Varkesh fleet. Her face appeared on every screen in the colony and on every Varkesh ship. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold as ice. "Thank you," she said calmly. "Thank you for showing us exactly what we're fighting for. You think you've broken us? You've just pissed us off. You want this planet? Come and take it. We'll be waiting." She cut the transmission. On the lead Varkesh warship, the commander stared at the blank screen in confusion. This wasn't how prey species were supposed to react. They were supposed to be begging for mercy. They were supposed to be broken. Instead, this human female had smiled at him. The commander sent word to his troops, "Prepare for invasion." This would be more difficult than expected, but the outcome was certain. The Varkesh had never lost a war. On New Jeju, Dongwoo gathered his marines and the civilian volunteers. Thousands of people stood ready, holding weapons they barely knew how to use. They should have been terrified. Instead, they were smiling. "Listen up," Dongwoo said. "The Varkesh are coming down in landing craft. They have better weapons than us. Better armor. Better training. They outnumber us 10 to 1. He paused, looking at all the faces around him. "But we have something they don't have. We have home. We have family. And we have something they've never seen before, humans who refuse to be scared." A young woman named Heijin stepped forward. She was a combat medic, one of the few with actual medical training. "What's the plan, Sergeant?" Dongwoo's smile matched Jiwoo's. "We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to improvise. We're going to adapt. And we're going to make them regret coming here." A civilian engineer named Juan raised his hand. "I have mining equipment that can be converted into weapons. Give me a few hours." "You've got 2, Dongwoo said. "They'll be landing soon." All across the colony, preparations continued. Traps were set. Ambush positions were prepared. The colonists weren't military experts, but they were smart, and they were motivated. High above, in orbit, the Varkesh warriors boarded their landing craft. They had invaded hundreds of worlds. This would be just another easy conquest. That's what they thought. As the landing craft descended toward New Jeju's surface, the Varkesh could see the colony below. Small towns, farmland, nothing impressive, nothing dangerous. They couldn't see the thousands of humans waiting below, all of them wearing the same expression. They were smiling. The first Varkesh landing craft touched down in an open field near the colony's main town. The rump dropped, and 50 Varkesh warriors marched out in perfect formation. They were 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor scales, and carrying weapons that could cut through steel. They expected to see humans running away in panic. Instead, the field was empty. The Varkish commander, a veteran named Chakra, scanned the area with his advanced sensors. He detected human life signs all around them, but he couldn't see anyone. The humans were hiding. "Standard pattern," Chakra ordered. "Move forward. Kill anyone who resists. Capture the rest." The Varkesh warriors advanced across the field. They had done this thousands of times on hundreds of worlds. It was always the same. Except this time, it wasn't. The ground exploded beneath them. Juan had spent the last 2 hours placing mining charges under the field. The explosives weren't designed for war, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to surprise the enemy. 3 Varkesh warriors went down immediately. The others scattered. Their perfect formation broken. Then the shooting started. Dongwu and his marines opened fire from concealed positions around the field. They weren't great shots, most of them, but they didn't need to be. They had spent hours setting up this ambush, making sure every angle was covered. The Varkesh tried to return fire, but they couldn't see their targets. The humans were hiding in buildings, behind vehicles, under ground cover. Every time a Varkesh warrior found a target, 2 more humans would shoot at him from different directions. Chakra realized with shock that his warriors were being hunted. "Fall back to the landing craft," he ordered, but Dongwu had prepared for that too. As the Varkesh retreated, they ran straight into another minefield. More explosions tore through their ranks. By the time the surviving Varkesh made it back to their landing craft, they had lost 15 warriors. 15 in their first engagement. Chakra immediately sent a message to the orbiting ships. "The humans are not behaving as expected. They fight with guerrilla tactics. Recommend overwhelming force." On the orbital command ship, the Varkesh High Commander received this message with disbelief. Guerrilla tactics? From a species that had only been in space for 5 years? Impossible. He sent down 5 more landing craft, each carrying 100 warriors. 500 Varkesh against a few thousand humans. This would end quickly. At DID and single quotes D. In the colony's main town, Haijin was setting up a field hospital in a reinforced building. She was a medic, trained to save lives, but right now she was also learning how to take them. "Wounded coming in!" Someone yelled. 2 civilians carried in a farmer who had been hit by Varkish weapons fire. His arm was badly burned. Haijin got to work immediately, her hand steady despite her fear. "You're going to be fine," she told the farmer. "The burn is bad but not critical. You'll keep the arm." The farmer managed a weak smile. "Did we get any of them?" "Dongwu's team took down 15 in the first fight," Haijin said, working quickly. "You should have seen the Varkesh run. Big scary aliens running away from farmers with rifles." The farmer laughed, then winced in pain. "Worth it." Outside, the battle was spreading across the colony. The Varkesh had landed 500 warriors, and they were trying to secure the main town. But every street was a trap. Every building was a fortress. Every corner hid another human with a weapon. A squad of Varkish warriors broke down the door of a warehouse. Inside, they found Juan and a dozen other civilians. The Varkesh expected them to surrender. Instead, Juan was sitting in the driver's seat of a massive mining machine, the kind used to dig through rock. He had spent the past hour welding metal plates to it as armor and mounting whatever weapons he could find on the front. "Hey guys," Juan said with a grin. "Let me show you what we do with our construction equipment." He fired up the machine's engines and drove straight at the Varkesh. The mining drill at the front was spinning at full speed. The Varkesh warriors scattered, firing their weapons, but the improvised armor held. Juan crashed the mining machine through a wall, taking out 3 Varkesh warriors in the process. Then he backed up and drove through another wall, laughing like a maniac the whole time. The surviving Varkesh warriors retreated. They had fought in hundreds of battles, but they had never seen anything like this. These humans were insane, and they wouldn't stop smiling. In orbit, Tianyang's ship Morning Star arrived with a small fleet of human vessels. They weren't warships. They were cargo haulers, mining ships, survey vessels, anything that could fly. Taeyang had spent the past 5 days gathering every human ship he could find and modifying them with whatever weapons were available. "This is Taeyang to New Jeju. We're here to help." Juwoo's voice came back, slightly out of breath. "About time. We're holding them on the ground, but those orbital ships are a problem. They could blast us from space whenever they want." "They won't," Taeyang said. "The Varkesh always follow the same pattern. They don't destroy planets from orbit. They want to conquer them, not destroy them. That's their weakness. What's your plan?" Taeyang looked at his ragtag fleet of modified civilian ships. "Something stupid, again." The human ships approached the Varkesh fleet slowly. The Varkesh could have destroyed them easily, but they were confused. Why would civilian ships attack warships? It made no sense. Taeyang broadcast a message to all the human ships. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're just trying to annoy them. Make them angry. Make them stupid." The human ships scattered in all directions. Some flew directly at the Varkesh warships, then veered away at the last second. Others fired their mining lasers, which barely scratched the Varkesh shields but were very annoying. One cargo ship dumped its entire load of garbage directly in front of a Varkesh warship's main view screen. The Varkesh commander was furious. "All ships target those pests. Destroy them." That's exactly what Taeyang wanted. As the Varkesh ships focused on the annoying civilian vessels, they stopped paying attention to the ground battle. They stopped coordinating with their ground forces. They got sloppy on the ground. Dongwoo saw his opportunity. "All units, push forward. Hit them while they're distracted." The colonists emerged from their hiding places and launched a coordinated attack on the Varkesh positions. The Varkesh warriors, who had been steadily advancing through the colony, suddenly found themselves surrounded and under fire from all sides. A young Varkesh warrior named Kreth was experiencing his first battle. He had been trained to expect fear from his enemies. He had been told that prey species always ran or begged for mercy, but these humans just kept coming. They fought with weapons that should have been useless. They used tactics that seemed insane. And worst of all, they kept smiling. Kreth shot at a human woman who was firing at him from behind a barricade. His shot hit her in the shoulder, and she went down. He started to move forward, expecting her to be dead or dying. Instead, she sat up, pressed her hand against the wound, and threw a grenade at him with her other hand. Kreth barely managed to dive for cover before it exploded. When he looked up, the woman was gone, dragged away by other humans. They were rescuing their wounded while still under fire. They were protecting each other. They were fighting as a unit. This wasn't what Kreth had been taught to expect from prey species. By nightfall, the battle was still raging. The Varkesh had landed over 1,000 warriors, but they had lost almost 300. Human casualties were higher, but not by much. And more importantly, the humans' morale was getting stronger, not weaker. In the field hospital, Haijin worked on patient after patient. Her hands were covered in blood, her uniform was dirty, and she hadn't slept in over 20 hours. But she was still cracking jokes with the wounded. "You know what the difference is between us and the Varkesh?" she asked a wounded colonist. "What?" "They think pain breaks people. We know it just pisses us off." The wounded colonist laughed, even though it hurt, high in orbit. The Varkesh High Commander was receiving reports from the ground. Each one was worse than the last. His warriors were being held to a stalemate by farmers and civilians. His ships were being harassed by cargo vessels. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. He sent an urgent message to Varkesh High Command. Request reinforcements. "These humans are difficult." It was the first time in 300 years that a Varkesh invasion force had asked for help. Back on the ground, Dongwoo gathered his marines for a brief rest. They were exhausted, wounded, and running low on ammunition. But they were still fighting. "How are we doing, Sergeant?" one marine asked. Dongwoo took a drink of water and looked at the Varkesh positions in the distance. "We're hurting them. For the first time in their history, they're actually taking casualties. They don't know how to handle it. Can we win?" Another Marine asked. Dongwu was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But even if we don't, we're going to make damn sure they remember us. Every Varkesh warrior who survives this battle is going to go home and tell stories about the humans who wouldn't stop fighting. The humans who smiled in the face of death. One of the Marines, a young woman named Soman, checked her rifle. Good, let them be scared of us for a change. Across the colony, in hundreds of different positions, similar conversations were happening. The humans were tired. They were scared. Many of them were wounded, but they weren't broken, and they weren't going to stop smiling. The war spread like fire across human space. What started on New Jeju became something much larger. The Varkesh Dominion, angry and confused by human resistance, committed 60% of their entire military to crush humanity once and for all. It was the biggest mistake they had ever made. Admiral Seojin stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiant. He was 60 years old, a veteran of Earth's naval forces, and he had seen combat before, but never anything like this. Around his ship, a fleet of human vessels waited for orders. There were military ships, yes, but also converted civilian vessels, cargo haulers with weapons welded to their hulls, mining ships with their drills turned into ramming spears, survey vessels equipped with improvised missiles. It looked like a junkyard. But it was humanity's fleet, and it was ready to fight. Sir, Varkesh battle group approaching, his sensor officer reported. 15 warships. They'll be in firing range in 10 minutes. Seojin nodded calmly. Next to him stood Minseo, a young woman who had become humanity's psychological warfare specialist. She had studied everything about the Varkesh, looking for weaknesses. Are we ready with the broadcast? Seojin asked her. Minseo smiled. Ready, sir? The Varkesh are about to learn something new. For 300 years, the Varkesh had used fear as their primary weapon. They broadcast torture and terror to break their enemy's will. Now humanity was going to use their own tactic against them, but with a twist. Send it, Seojin ordered. Across all Varkesh communication channels, a video began playing. It showed human soldiers in combat. But these weren't images of defeat or fear. They showed humans laughing while under fire. They showed wounded soldiers making jokes as medics treated them. They showed pilots performing insane maneuvers and grinning the whole time. One clip showed Dongwu's Marines on New Jeju, celebrating after driving off a Varkesh attack. They were bloodied and tired, but they were dancing and singing. Another clip showed Taiyang ramming his cargo ship into a Varkesh warship, with the audio of him laughing as he did it. The final clip was Juwo's response to the Varkesh torture broadcast. Her cold smile. Her words, "Come and take it." The message was clear. Humans don't break. We don't surrender. And we smile while we fight. On the Varkesh command ships, warriors watched these broadcasts in confusion. This wasn't how prey species were supposed to behave. Some of the younger Varkesh warriors felt something they had never experienced before. Fear. The battle began moments later. The Varkesh expected their usual tactics to work: overwhelming firepower, coordinated strikes, psychological dominance, but human tactics were different. Unpredictable, chaotic. Yuane was a starfighter pilot, one of the best in the human fleet. She led a wing of 12 small fighters against the Varkesh warships. Her fighters were tiny compared to the massive Varkesh vessels, like insects attacking elephants. Remember, Yuna said to her wing, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to annoy them. Make them waste ammunition. Make them stupid. Copy that, one of her pilots replied. Let's be annoying. The human fighters scattered in all directions. They flew patterns that made no sense to the Varkesh tactical computers. They would charge directly at a warship, then veer away at impossible angles. They would group together, then scatter. They would attack from one direction, then immediately attack from another. The Varkesh gunners couldn't predict them. Human pilots didn't follow standard combat doctrine because humans didn't have standard combat doctrine yet. Every pilot was improvising. One of Yuna's fighters, piloted by a young man named Woojin, flew directly under a Varkesh warship. skimming so close to the hull that his shield scraped against their armor. "Wujin, what are you doing?" Yuna yelled. "Testing something," Wujin replied. He activated his fighter's mining laser, normally used to cut through asteroids. It wasn't powerful enough to damage the Varkesh ship's armor, but it was bright. Very bright. The laser carved a line of light directly across the Varkesh ship's main view screen, blinding the bridge crew for a few seconds. "Did you just blind a warship with a mining laser?" Yuna asked, impressed. "Sure did. I call it the flashlight special. All across the battlefield, human pilots were pulling similar stunts. They weren't fighting like professional soldiers. They were fighting like people who had watched too many action movies and decided to try everything. It was working. The Varkesh fleet tried to maintain formation. But the constant harassment was breaking their coordination. Ships were firing at targets that weren't there. Captains were giving conflicting orders. The perfect military machine was starting to glitch. That's when Seojin gave the real order. All heavy ships target their command vessel. Full weapons. The converted cargo haulers and military ships opened fire together. Their weapons weren't as advanced as Varkesh technology, but there were a lot of them. And they were all aimed at one target. The Varkesh command ship's shields flickered under the barrage. The Varkesh captain tried to maneuver, but Yuna's fighters were already harassing his engine ports, forcing him to maintain position. Shields at 60%. The Varkesh sensor officer reported 40%, 20%. The Varkesh captain made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. All ships retreat. We'll regroup, and he never finished the sentence. A human cargo ship, its engine overloaded and ready to explode, crashed directly into the command ship's bridge. The pilot had ejected seconds before impact. Laughing the entire time, the Varkesh command ship went dark. Without their leader, the rest of the Varkesh fleet fell into confusion. Some ships tried to continue fighting. Others began to retreat. Seojin watched them go. "Let them run. They'll tell others what happened here." Minseo was recording everything. "This footage will spread across Varkesh space. Every warrior will see it. They'll see their command ship destroyed by a cargo hauler. They'll see their perfect fleet running from humans." "Good," Seojin said. "Let them see. Let them learn to be afraid." But the war was far from over. The Varkesh had sent forces to multiple human colonies. Each one was fighting its own battle. On a colony called Haven's Rest, the Varkesh had captured a human position and taken prisoners. Among them was Taiyang. After weeks of fighting across different systems, his ship had finally been shot down. He was wounded, angry, and in Varkesh custody. They brought him before Warlord Krethax, the supreme commander of all Varkesh forces. Krethax was ancient by Varkesh standards, over 200 years old. He had personally overseen the conquest of 30 different species. "I wanted to meet you," Krethax said, studying Taiyang. "You are the first human we encountered. The one who rammed our ship with a cargo vessel." Taiyang, despite being wounded and restrained, smiled. "That was a good day." Krethax was fascinated. "Why do you smile?" "I could kill you right now." "Then kill me," Taiyang said, his smile never fading. "But you won't learn anything. That's why you captured me instead of killing me. You want to understand us. You want to know why your tactics don't work on humans." Krethax sat back. "You are correct. Tell me, why don't your species fear death?" "We do fear death," Taiyang replied. "We're not stupid, but fear doesn't control us. We learned a long time ago that being afraid doesn't help, so we feel the fear and keep going anyway." "That makes no sense," Krethax said. "Fear exists to protect you. It tells you when you're in danger." Taiyang's smile widened. "Yeah, and we've spent our entire history being in danger. From predators, from disease, from each other. We've had more wars on our own planet than you've had in your entire empire. We know what real terror looks like because we invented it. Your torture broadcasts? Your intimidation tactics? That's amateur hour compared to what humans have done to each other. For the first time in his long life, Krethax felt uncomfortable. Tai Yang continued. You've been conquering species for 300 years. Every single one of them broke when you scared them. So you thought fear was the ultimate weapon. But you never met a species that looked at fear and said, "Is that all you've got?" Krethax ordered his guards to take Tai Yang to a detention cell. He needed to think about this. Over the next 3 days, Krethax tried everything to break Tai Yang. He tortured him. He threatened him. He showed him broadcasts of other humans being killed. Nothing worked. Tai Yang just kept smiling. Sometimes he would scream from pain, yes. He was still human. But as soon as the pain stopped, the smile came back. You can't win, Tai Yang told Krethax after one particularly brutal session. Even if you kill every human in the galaxy, you'll lose. Because now you know that there's a species out there that doesn't fear you. That knowledge will eat away at your empire. Every species you've conquered will hear about us. They'll hear that someone finally fought back. And they'll start wondering, if humans can resist, why can't we? Krethax struck him across the face. You are prisoners. Your colonies are surrounded. Your people are dying. Tai Yang spit blood and smiled. Yeah, but we're taking a lot of you with us. How many warriors have you lost? 1,000? 2,000? You've never had casualties like this before, have you? It was true. The Varkesh had lost more warriors in 1 month fighting humans than they had lost in the past 10 years fighting everyone else. That night, Tai Yang escaped. He had been studying the detention cell since his arrival, looking for weaknesses. The Varkesh guards were overconfident. The message came through on every channel at once. It reached every human colony, every ship, every outpost. The transmission was simple and direct. This is humanity. We're done playing defense. Admiral Seojin stood before the entire human fleet. Behind him were hundreds of ships, military vessels, converted cargo haulers, mining ships, survey vessels, even some luxury yachts that had been fitted with weapons. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, and they were heading straight for Varketh Prime, the Varkesh homeworld. Are we really doing this? Minseo asked Seojin quietly. We're invading their home planet. No one has ever even attacked Varketh Prime before. Seojin nodded. That's exactly why we're doing it. For 300 years, the Varkesh have attacked other people's homes. It's time they learned what that feels like. Across the fleet, pilots and soldiers prepared for battle. Among them was Yuna, checking her fighter for the 100th time. Next to her, Wujin was painting something on his ship's nose. What's that? Yuna asked. A smile, Wujin said, finishing the crude drawing. I want them to see it coming. On the troop transport ships, Dongwu was briefing his marines. Many of them were veterans from New Jeju. They had fought in the first battles against the Varkesh. Now they were going to finish what they started. Listen up, Dongwu said. We're not trying to conquer their planet. We're not trying to kill all of them. We're just sending a message. We're showing them that if they come after us, we'll come after them. Understand? The Marines nodded. Among them was Haijin, who had been promoted from medic to combat medic after her service on New Jeju. She had saved dozens of lives while under fire. Now she was ready to fight alongside the people she had saved. What about the people they've conquered? Haijin asked. The other species. Will they help us? Seojin had been wondering the same thing. The Varkesh had enslaved 42 different civilizations. If those civilizations learned that humanity was attacking the Varkesh homeworld, would they rise up? The answer came sooner than expected. As the human fleet approached Varkesh territory, they received a transmission from Kelver, the Thilani representative who had tried to convince Jiwoo to surrender months ago. This is Kelver to the human fleet. My people, we've been watching your broadcasts. We've seen humans fight. We've seen humans win. And we've decided, if you can fight them, so can we. The Thilani are rising up. We're attacking our Varkesh occupiers. We're fighting for our freedom. Similar messages came in from other conquered species. The Korathi, the Villani, the Threxians. All across the Varkesh Dominion, rebellions were breaking out. Minseo smiled as she listened to the messages. It's working. They saw us refuse to be afraid, and it gave them courage. The Varkesh Elder Council watched in horror as their empire began to crumble. Rebellions on a dozen worlds. Supply lines cut. Communications disrupted. And now, a human fleet approaching their sacred homeworld. This is impossible, one elder said. We have defended Varketh Prime for 3,000 years. No enemy has ever breached our defenses. The humans are not a normal enemy, another elder replied, watching the tactical displays. They don't follow any known combat doctrine. They improvise. They adapt. They do things that make no tactical sense but somehow work. Warlord Krethax stood before the council. He looked older now, tired. The past months of fighting humans had worn him down. I told you we should have negotiated, he said. Now they're bringing the war to us. Then we will destroy them, the head elder said firmly. Activate all planetary defenses. Deploy the home fleet. We will show these humans what happens when they challenge the Varkesh Dominion. The battle for Varketh Prime began 3 hours later. The Varkesh home fleet was massive. Over 100 warships defending their planet. They had weapons platforms in orbit. Fighter squadrons numbering in the thousands. Planetary shields that could withstand nuclear bombardment. Against this, humanity brought improvisation and anger. Sirjan's battle plan was simple. Make them think we're insane. The human fleet approached in scattered groups instead of organized formations. Some ships charged directly at the Varkesh defenses. Others hung back. Some were broadcasting music. Loud, aggressive music that confused Varkesh communications. What are they doing? A Varkesh fleet commander asked, watching the chaotic approach. His tactical officer had no answer. I don't know, sir. Their movements make no sense. Then Yuna's fighter wing hit them from an unexpected angle. Instead of attacking the Varkesh warships, they targeted the weapons platforms. The platforms were heavily defended, but they weren't designed to track small, fast-moving fighters that flew in spirals while broadcasting taunts. Come on, you big ugly satellite, Wujin yelled as he fired at a weapons platform. I've seen better aim from my grandmother. The weapons platform tried to track him but couldn't keep up. Wujin's fighter was flying in patterns that violated every principle of efficient flight. He was wasting fuel, putting unnecessary stress on his ship, and flying in ways that made his co-pilot sick, but he was impossible to hit. One by one, the weapons platforms went down. This opened a path for the larger ships to advance. Sojun's flagship, Defiant, led the charge. It wasn't the biggest ship or the most powerful, but it was crewed by humans who had spent months fighting the Varkesh. They knew every trick, every weakness. Target their command ship, Sirjin ordered. All weapons. The Varkesh command ship tried to evade, but it was too slow. Too predictable. The Varkesh had spent 300 years fighting enemies who followed standard military doctrine. Humans didn't do that. The Defiant's weapons tore through the command ship's shields. Alarms blared across its bridge. Sir, we're taking heavy damage, the Varkesh tactical officer reported. Impossible, the Varkesh commander replied. Their weapons are inferior to ours. Yes, sir, but there are so many of them. They're not trying for precision hits. They're just shooting everything at us. It was true. Human gunners weren't trained to hit specific weak points. They were just firing as fast as possible at the biggest target. Sometimes quantity beats quality. The command ship's shields failed. Without their flagship coordinating the defense, the Varkesh fleet began to fall into disarray. Meanwhile, Dongwu's marines were landing on the planet's surface. Their mission wasn't to conquer. It was to reach the Elder Council chambers and deliver a message. Varkesh ground forces tried to stop them. But the humans were using the same tactics that had worked on New Jeju: ambush, traps, improvised weapons. They turned every vehicle into a weapon, every building into a fortress. Haijin was treating wounded marines while simultaneously throwing grenades at Varkesh positions. This is insane, she yelled. I know, Dongwu yelled back, smiling. Isn't it great? They fought their way through the Varkesh capital city. It took 3 days of brutal combat. Humans took casualties. Many of them. But they kept pushing forward, finally. They reached the Elder Council chambers. Taiyang was there, having linked up with the invasion force. He had been flying missions nonstop since his escape. Now he stood at the entrance to the chambers where the Varkish leaders were hiding. Open the door, he ordered. Inside, the Elder Council waited. They were old, powerful, and had ruled an empire for centuries. Now they watched as a human soldier walked into their sacred chambers, covered in dust and blood, wearing a smile. Taiyang wasn't there to execute them. He had a different plan. I'm here to make you a broadcast, he said. The same kind you've been making for 300 years. Except this time you're going to be in it. The elders realized what he meant. For centuries, they had broadcast terror to break their enemies. Now humanity was going to broadcast the defeat of the Varkesh dominion to every species they had conquered. This is Taiyang of Earth. Broadcasting from the Elder Council chambers on Varketh Prime, he said into the camera. Behind him, the Varkesh elders sat in defeat. Your reign of terror is over. Not because we destroyed you, but because you've lost the one weapon you relied on, fear. Every species you conquered is watching right now. They see you can bleed. They see you can lose. Your empire dies today, not by our hand, but by theirs. He turned to look at the elders. He was smiling, but his eyes were serious. You wanted to know what humans are? We're the species that learn to smile in the dark. We're the species that fights when fighting makes no sense. We're the species that refuses to break. And now everyone knows it. The broadcast went out across every Varkesh world. Every conquered planet, every corner of their empire. The effect was immediate. On Thalani Prime, Kelver led his people in overthrowing their Varkesh occupiers. On Karathi, the rebellion succeeded within hours. On world after world, the species that had been conquered for centuries rose up. The Varkesh dominion, which had stood for 300 years, collapsed in 3 weeks. Warlord Krethax watched it all from a command center on Varketh Prime. He had been captured by human forces but was being treated well. Too well, he thought. Why weren't they executing him? Taiyang came to see him one last time. Why? Krethax asked. Why didn't you destroy us? You had the chance. Taiyang sat down across from him. Because we're not you. We don't conquer. We don't enslave. We just wanted you to stop hurting people. Mission accomplished. What are you? Krethax asked, the same question he had asked before. Taiyang's smile was gentler now. We're humans.